100 years ago, this is not how your great-grandparents were welcomed into the world. Today's Yoruba naming ceremony can hardly be compared to what works back then, but what changes. Before the sun fully rises, the compound is already awake. Women are already on their way to the stream. Others are sweeping the compound, pulling out mats, laying them across the ground where people will sit for the naming ceremony. Parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, and members of the extended families will be all seated on the mats. So at the center, the oldest grandparents and the Olori Ebi will also sit. So if the newborn is a girl, the gathering will take place on the 7th day after death. But if it is a boy, the family will gather on the 9th day. The oldest woman in the family, the Yagba or Yaka, will then carry the baby and step into the middle of the gathering. So a small bowl of water will be brought forward. She then dips her finger into it and gently touches the baby's lips and say, "May your life be as calm and as clear as water." That's the first prayer. The bowl of water is taken away. So another calabash is brought forward. So inside it is honey. She then dips her finger into it again, gently touches the baby lips and say, "May your life be sweet." Ashe, everyone will say. Then the honey is taken away. Another calabash is brought forward, which contains palm oil. She touches the baby lips again and say, "May your path be smooth. May you never know hardship." Everyone will say Ashe. So another calabash will be brought forward, which contains a kola nut, and say, "May you live long and prosper." Ashe, everybody will say. Then salt. So they will bring a calabash which also contains salt, and she will say, "May your life never lose its value. May you always find favor." Everyone will then say Ashe. Then comes the alligator pepper and say, "May you overcome every challenges that comes your way." Everybody will reply Ashe. Then the baby is lifted again. The Olori Ebi or the oldest grandparents call out the child's name. Names like Babatunde, Yewande, Tayelolu, Omokahinde, Abiodun, Kokumo, Durojaye, Ogundele, Olaniyi, Bamishaye, Sangowole, and so on. Then follows by the Oriki Omo, praise names that tie the child back to the family history, like Adisa, Ajagbe, Akanmu, Arike, Adoni, Awero, Abeho, and so on. So after the naming, the baby is gently returned to the oldest woman, who then carries the baby back into the house. Then the food is served. Hot amala, amala dudu, eko tutu wrapped in leaves, and a freshly pounded iyan shared around the mat with egusi and ewedu soup, with goat meat or bush meat. Calabashes of emu gidi are passed from hand to hand. As people begin to eat, the village drummers strike the first beat. The praise singers step forward, chanting the family's oriki, calling out the names of their ancestors and celebrating the arrival of the newborn. It is now the mid-20th century, somewhere between 1940s and the 1960s. Yoruba tradition are still deeply respected, but change is beginning to find its place. Christianity, Islam, and Western education are gradually shaping family life, and the naming ceremony no longer unfold exactly as it did in the early 19th. So family members arrive at the family house for the naming ceremony. The newborn is brought before the elders after 7 days for a girl and 9 days for a boy, just as the tradition requires. One by one, honey, water, salt, alligator pepper, palm oil, kola nuts are presented. As each item is placed before the child, the elders explain its meaning and pray for its strength, sweetness, wisdom, peace and prosperity for the child. Even in some Muslims and Christian households, this symbol remain part of the naming ceremony. The Oloriebi still sits in place of honor, guiding the gathering as respected elders offers their blessings. Then, depending on the family's faith, a pastor, catechist or imam step forward to lead prayers. Traditional blessings and the family new faith now stand side by side during Yoruba naming ceremony, revealing a Yoruba naming ceremony that is changing with time while still holding family to its cultural roots. In the 1940s to 1960s, a Yoruba child's name was more than just an identity. It was a story, a prayer, and a piece of family history. Many children still receive traditional Yoruba names that reflected the circumstances of their birth, family experience, or the hope of their parents. Names like Babatunde, Yetunde, Taiwo, and Kehinde connected children to their ancestors and family heritage. This period was also a time of change. Christianity and Western education had spread across many Yoruba communities, so English and biblical names such as Samuel, Joseph, Mary, Esther became common alongside traditional Yoruba names. Muslim families also combine Yoruba tradition with Islamic influence, giving children Arabic names such as Sikiru, Razak, Aisha, together with Yoruba names. Names that praise God became common during this era. Names beginning with Oluwa reflected gratitude, faith, and hope for the future. So, children born in the 1950s might leave the naming ceremony with several names: a traditional Yoruba name, an English name, an Arabic name, family names, and praise names, each carrying its own meaning and history. So, at the naming ceremony in 1940s to 1960s, guests sit on mats and wooden benches. Bowls of pounded yam, amala, ewedu, gbegiri, moi and akara are passed from hand to hand as everyone shares in the joy of welcoming the newborn child. Songs such as early juju music by Tunde King, juju music by Ike Dairo, Apala music by Haruna Ishola, and traditional talking drum performances were commonly used to celebrate Yoruba naming ceremonies during the 1940s to 1960s. The Yoruba naming ceremony of the 1940s and the 1960s was the beginning to change with the times, where earlier ceremonies relied mainly on water, palm wine, and local drinks. Bottled soft drinks were now making their ways onto the celebration tables. Urban houses were gradually replacing the large family compound that had hosted generations of naming ceremonies. So, for the first time, some wealthier families invited photographers to capture black and white portraits, preserving memories that earlier generations could only keep in their hearts. Western style clothing also began to appear alongside traditional Yoruba attires, such as shirts, suits, dress made with agbada, iro and buba. Chairs and tables became common, slowly replacing the mats and wooden benches that had long been part of the celebration. It was a unique moment in Yoruba history, a time when old traditions and modern influences stood side by side. So, from the late 20th century to today, Yoruba naming ceremony have remained a special day when family and friends gather to welcome a newborn child. So, naming ceremony happened at different times of the day. Some family preferred early morning ceremony, especially traditional and Muslim families. Others may want afternoon after church services, while some modern celebration began in the evening to allow working guests to attend. The pastor or imam officially announced the child's name. Christian families usually had a pastor standing before the gathering to pray and announce names such as Samuel, Grace, Esther, Michael, David, Mercy. While Muslim families often had an imam who recited prayers before announcing names such as Abdullah, Aisha, Fatima, Yusuf, Muhammad. Alongside these were Yoruba names such as Oluwaseun, Ayomide, Temitope, Folake. So the mother and the father dressed like the star of the day. The mother often wore expensive lace, Ankara, George wrapper, aṣọ òkè with a matching gele, while the father appear in agbada, buba and sokoto or matching family attires. So guests dressed in their best native attires. Asoebi became part of the celebrations. So by 1980s and especially in the 1990s, close family members increasingly wore more matching fabrics to show unity, and plastic chairs under canopies became a familiar sight, and decoration became more elaborate over time. So and even food became an important part of the celebrations. So common foods like jollof rice, fried rice, moi moi, salad, amala with ewedu, pounded yam, chicken, assorted meat, biscuits and bottled soft drinks became regular foods and refreshments at Yoruba naming ceremony, especially from the 1980s and 1990s onward. From the 1970s to today, music has remained one of the most memorable parts of Yoruba naming ceremonies. The 1970s were dominated by talking drums, bata drummers, praise singers and juju music. By 1980s and 1990s was the rise of Fuji music, live bands, cassette players and money spraying. By the 2020s and 2010s, DJs, CDs, Afrobeats had become common, while traditional drumming continued to preserve the Yoruba cultural atmosphere. Today, Yoruba naming ceremony blend modern music with timeless traditions, creating celebrations that connect generations. Though the songs, instruments, and technology have changed over the decades, the art of the Yoruba naming ceremony remains the same. The sound of talking drums, the melodies of juju and Fuji music, the laughter of family members, and the joy of welcoming a newborn continue to unite generations. So for many, these ceremonies are not just celebration but cherished memories of culture, community, and the beginning of a new life story.